There comes a time in life when the noise around you becomes louder than your own thoughts. Expectations, opinions, judgments, they all start to drown your voice. In moments like these, the greatest act of courage is not to speak louder, but to go silent. And turn inward, because the real journey doesn't begin when you prove others wrong. It begins when you stop trying to prove anything at all. You see, life will keep distracting you. It will throw comparisons, doubts, and detours your way. People will talk, some will doubt you, some will laugh, and some won't even notice you're trying. But none of that matters because you're not here to meet their standards. You are here to meet yourself. Focus is not about blocking out the world, it's about choosing what truly deserves your energy. It's about showing up for yourself every single day, even when no one claps, even when no one believes. You don't need an audience to become powerful, you just need clarity, discipline, and the kind of self-love that isn't shaken by other people's silence or noise. So stop waiting for validation. Stop waiting for the perfect moment or a round of applause. Turn your pain into your purpose, your doubt into drive, and your silence into strength. Let your success be your story, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that you were always right to believe. In a world that constantly demands our attention, it's easy to get lost in the noise. The opinions of others, the expectations of society, the pressure to keep up. All of these voices begin to speak louder than the one that matters the most, our own. There's a constant pull in every direction, a need to be everything for everyone, and somewhere in that process, we forget how to be true to ourselves. But silence, though often feared, can be the most powerful teacher. It is in the silence that we start hearing what's real. It is in those quiet moments when the world goes still that we finally begin to hear our own heartbeat, our own dreams, our own truth. Listening to your inner voice is not just about meditation or calmness. It's about reconnecting with the essence of who you are without the filters. It's about separating the noise from the message, the distraction from the direction. Many people go through life following a script written by others, parents, teachers, friends, society, but never once pause to ask themselves what they truly want. That pause, that question, can only come when you shut out the noise long enough to hear your own soul speak. When you begin to listen to your inner voice, it may not be loud or confident at first. It may be soft, hesitant, and even uncertain. But that doesn't mean it's not powerful. In fact, the most profound truths often arrive in whispers. They come not to overwhelm you, but to gently guide you toward what is meant for you. The noise around you might tell you to move faster, to compete harder, to chase what everyone else is chasing. But your inner voice might be asking you to slow down, to take a different path, to define success in your own terms. Silencing the noise is not about avoiding people or rejecting society. It's about knowing what to let in and what to keep out. It's about drawing boundaries, not because you are arrogant or indifferent, but because you understand the value of your energy. You begin to realize that not every opinion deserves a reaction. Not every voice deserves a seat in your mind. When you become selective about what you consume, whether it's conversations, content, or company, you start creating space for clarity. Clarity brings direction. When you stop listening to the world's version of your life, you start writing your own. Your goals are no longer dictated by trends or timelines, but by what feels aligned with your purpose. And purpose doesn't always scream. Sometimes it's a quiet knowing that gently tugs at your heart when you're still enough to notice. This stillness becomes your power. It becomes the place where resilience is built, where identity is rooted, and where confidence is reborn. People may misunderstand your silence. They may assume you're lost, distracted, or disconnected. But silence is not a weakness, it's a strategy. While others are busy proving themselves, you are busy understanding yourself, and that understanding gives you an edge no amount of noise can offer. It's not always about speaking up. It's about knowing when to remain still and when to move with intention. As you begin to silence the noise and tune into your own voice, you'll notice a shift. Your choices become more intentional. Your actions become more focused. You no longer chase validation or fear rejection. You realize that your worth doesn't need to be explained, defended, or proven. It just needs to be owned. And when you own your voice, when you truly listen to it and follow where it leads, you create a life that feels whole, a life that doesn't require external approval to feel meaningful. The most authentic version of you lives beneath the layers of expectation and noise. To uncover it, you must be willing to sit with yourself, to face the discomfort of silence, and to trust what you hear in that space. It may not be what others want you to hear. It may even challenge everything you thought you believed. But it will be real, and in a world full of noise, real is rare. Your focus is your power. Something so simple, yet so often forgotten. In today's world, where everything is built to distract you, focus becomes more than just a skill, it becomes a survival trait. Every ping on your phone, every scroll through social media, every opinion thrown your way is a test of your attention. And slowly, without even realizing it, you find your energy scattered, your thoughts hijacked, and your dreams delayed. You become busy but not productive, surrounded but not connected, active but not aligned. That's the cost of losing focus. But when you reclaim it, everything changes. Focus isn't about intensity all the time. It's about consistency in the right direction. It's about deciding what deserves your time, your energy, your peace. People often talk about multitasking like it's a strength, but the truth is, doing too many things at once often means doing none of them well. The human mind is powerful, but it's also limited in its attention. And where your attention goes, your life flows. If you allow your focus to be pulled in every direction, don't be surprised when your goals feel further away with each passing day. There will always be 1,000 things trying to demand your focus, some urgent, some noisy, some disguised as opportunities, but not all of them are meant for you. The real power lies in learning to say no. Not out of arrogance or fear, but out of clarity. When you know what truly matters, everything else becomes background noise. And to get to that place, you have to pause and ask yourself, what do I really want? What am I building? Who am I becoming? The answers won't always come immediately, but asking the questions is the first act of focus. People will question your choices when you choose focus. They'll wonder why you're not always available, why you've gone quiet, why you've stopped participating in things that no longer serve you. But your silence is not absence. It's presence with yourself. It's choosing to invest that energy in your growth, in your healing, in your vision. You don't owe everyone access to your mind. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table where your future is being built. There's a certain kind of peace that comes with focus. You wake up with a sense of direction. You stop comparing yourself to others because you understand that your path is your own. You no longer chase every shiny thing because you know that not everything that glitters is gold. Some distractions come dressed as opportunities. Some temptations come disguised as shortcuts. But your focus allows you to see beyond the surface. It teaches you to wait, to work, and to trust the process. And focus doesn't mean you won't fail. It doesn't mean the journey will be perfect. But it means you'll stay committed even when it's hard. You'll return to your purpose again and again, even when things fall apart. Because when you are focused, your setbacks don't define you. They refine you. Every mistake becomes a lesson, every challenge a test of how badly you want it. And when others give up, your focus keeps you going. Not because you're better, but because you're anchored. In a distracted world, focus is a rebellion. It's choosing depth over noise, meaning over popularity, purpose over performance. It's turning off the world sometimes so you can tune in to what matters. It's walking away from chaos, not because you're afraid of it, but because you've chosen peace. And peace is not passive. It's intentional. It takes strength to stay centered when everything around you pulls you in 100 directions. But that strength comes from your focus. Every dream you have, every goal you're working toward, every version of yourself you're trying to become, it all depends on where your focus lies. You can't control everything, but you can control what you choose to focus on. And that choice shapes your days, your thoughts, your habits, your life. Focus is not something you find, it's something you practice. Every day, in small ways, you either feed your distractions or fuel your purpose. Self-growth begins when you stop seeking validation. It's easy to fall into the pattern of doing things just to be seen, liked, or approved. From a young age, we are taught to seek permission, whether it's for our choices, our ideas, or even our dreams. We grow up believing that our worth depends on someone else's opinion, on the applause we receive, or on how well we fit into a box created by others. But the truth is, real growth begins the moment you step away from that need. When you no longer perform for approval, but instead move from alignment, everything about you starts to shift. You begin to discover who you are, not who the world wants you to be. That's when the layers start to peel off. The layers of trying to impress, of trying to meet impossible standards, of trying to be enough for people who don't even know how to be enough for themselves. When you stop seeking validation, you give yourself the space to become. You give yourself permission to explore your truth without fear of judgment or rejection. And in that space, growth happens. Not quickly, not loudly, but deeply and honestly. Most people never realize how much of their life is driven by the fear of not being liked. They choose careers, relationships, and even lifestyles based on how others will perceive them. They become actors in their own stories, constantly waiting for applause that rarely comes. But you can't grow when you're trapped in performance mode. You can't evolve when your identity is tied to external praise. Growth requires authenticity, and authenticity begins with courage. The courage to be disliked, misunderstood, and even criticized. Validation is addictive because it gives us temporary relief. It tells us we're on the right track, that we matter, that we're seen, but it's also fragile. One bad comment, one moment of silence, one glance of disapproval, and suddenly your confidence crumbles. That's the danger of depending on external validation. It puts your self-worth in the hands of people who might not even understand your journey. But when you build your foundation internally, you don't shake every time the outside world wavers. You become steady, you become self-led. There is power in knowing that you are enough even when no one claps for you. There is freedom in waking up and choosing to be yourself, even if no one validates that version of you. When you let go of the need for validation, you become your own mirror. You start asking different questions. Not will they like this, but does this feel right to me? Not what will they think, but what do I believe? And those questions open up new paths, ones that are aligned with your values, not someone else's expectations. Letting go of validation doesn't mean you stop listening to feedback or close yourself off from others. It simply means you no longer let their voices drown your own. You learn to take advice without losing direction. You learn to accept criticism without collapsing. You grow from what serves you and let go of what doesn't. And that balance, that wisdom, is what allows real growth to happen. Growth isn't always pretty. Sometimes it means sitting in silence while the world moves on. Sometimes it means standing alone in a decision no one understands. But it's in those moments, when you choose yourself over acceptance, that you level up. You start attracting people, opportunities, and experiences that match your truth, not your performance. And suddenly, life becomes less about proving and more about living. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to recognize that your voice, your pace, your path are all valid, even if no one else says so. That trust builds confidence, and confidence, when rooted in authenticity, is unshakable. It's no longer about appearing strong, it's about being grounded. It's not about being fearless, it's about showing up even when you're afraid. That's what self-growth really looks like. You evolve not because someone else claps for you, but because you've decided to clap for yourself. You learn not just how to succeed, but how to be okay when things go wrong. You learn how to bounce back, how to let go, and how to keep going. And every step forward becomes less about being seen and more about being whole. Discipline is louder than motivation. Motivation is a beautiful feeling. It can lift you, inspire you, and push you to start something new. But it's also fleeting. It comes and goes like the weather, unpredictable and unreliable. One day you're filled with fire and ambition, and the next, you're dragging yourself through the motions, wondering where that spark disappeared. That's where discipline comes in. Discipline is the quiet force that stays behind after the motivation fades. It's not loud, it doesn't seek attention, but it shows up day after day, choice after choice. Motivation may get you started, but only discipline will keep you going. Because real growth doesn't happen in moments of inspiration. It happens in the boring, difficult, unglamorous routines that no one sees. It's built in the early mornings when you don't feel like waking up. In the hours you spend practicing, studying, creating, even when the results aren't showing yet. It's forged in those quiet battles where no one is watching, but you keep showing up anyway. That's where the strongest version of you is made. People often wait for motivation to strike before they begin. They keep delaying their goals, their dreams, their routines, waiting for that perfect burst of energy. But the truth is, you don't need to feel ready. You need to start anyway. Discipline teaches you that your actions are not dependent on your mood. It teaches you to work with your emotions, not be controlled by them. Because if you only act when you feel like it, you'll never be consistent. And consistency is the key that unlocks everything. Discipline is a form of self-respect. It's choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. It's saying no to the easy way out and yes to the work again and again. It's about making promises to yourself and keeping them. Not because anyone is watching, but because you've decided that your future matters, that your word to yourself carries weight. And when you start showing up for yourself in that way, something shifts. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to believe in your own strength, not because of what you've accomplished, but because of what you've endured. There will be days when everything feels hard. Days when you doubt yourself, when the path seems too long, and quitting feels like the most reasonable option. Motivation won't save you on those days, but discipline will. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel, it asks what needs to be done. It grounds you when everything around you feels uncertain. It becomes your anchor when life tries to shake you, and in that steadiness you grow. You become more resilient, more focused, more in control. Success doesn't come from doing great things once in a while. It comes from doing small things with purpose, over and over again. That's the power of discipline. It's not about perfection. It's about effort. It's about showing up when it's hard, when it's uncomfortable, when it's boring. And through that consistent effort, you begin to build momentum. That momentum turns into habits, and those habits shape your life. Your identity shifts from someone who wants change to someone who creates it. People may admire your results, but they'll never see the discipline behind them. They won't see the nights you stayed in while others went out. The mornings you got up when it was still dark. The sacrifices, the routines, the moments when you chose your goals over your feelings. But you'll know, and that inner knowing, that quiet pride in how far you've come is worth more than any praise or recognition. The most successful people aren't the most motivated. They're the most disciplined. They've trained themselves to move forward regardless of the circumstances. They've learned how to stay focused in chaos, how to work in silence, how to keep going when no one is watching. And that mindset is available to anyone. You don't need to be the most talented, the most inspired, or the most supported. You just need to be the most consistent. Discipline gives you control over your time, your actions, your outcomes. It turns dreams into plans and plans into reality. And once you understand that, you stop chasing motivation and start building habits. You start showing up for yourself not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because you know that the life you want is on the other side of the effort you're willing to give. Let your progress be louder than your explanations. In a world where everyone is constantly speaking, posting, and proving, it's tempting to explain every decision, defend every step, and convince others why you're doing what you're doing. But true growth doesn't need a press release. It doesn't need to be announced or advertised. It simply needs to be lived. When you're truly focused on evolving, you no longer feel the urge to justify your path. You understand that your journey is yours alone, and the results will speak when the time is right. There will always be people who question your choices. Some will misunderstand you. Some will doubt you. Some will gossip or make assumptions based on what little they know. And if you allow yourself to constantly respond, explain, or react, you'll spend all your energy trying to manage perceptions instead of building your reality. Progress demands privacy. It demands focus. And focus doesn't coexist with the need to explain. When you're truly in alignment with your goals, silence becomes your strength. The people who are making the most noise often have the least progress. That's not because they're not capable. It's because they're too busy trying to prove instead of improve. They talk about what they'll do, what they're planning, what they deserve, but you don't need to tell the world what you're building. You need to build it, and when the time comes, your progress will reveal what words never could. It will become the loudest and most undeniable form of proof. Every time you explain your dream to someone who doesn't understand it, you dilute a little bit of your fire. Not because they can stop you, but because explaining something that was born in your heart to someone who sees life through a different lens can make you second. Guess yourself. Growth often looks strange to people who have never seen it up close. Change makes people uncomfortable, especially when it reminds them of the things they're not doing. That discomfort is not your responsibility. Your job is to keep growing. You're not obligated to make sense to everyone. You're not here to meet expectations that were never yours to begin with. You're here to evolve, and evolution is messy, confusing, and often misunderstood. It happens behind the scenes. It looks like distance. It looks like silence, but really, it's transformation. You outgrow environments, patterns, and even people. And sometimes, the best explanation is no explanation at all. Just progress. Quiet, steady, unapologetic progress. When you let your progress do the talking, you begin to shift from being reactive to being intentional. You stop chasing validation and start chasing growth. You learn that energy is precious, and not everyone deserves a piece of yours. Not every comment deserves a reply. Not every criticism deserves a defense. Some things are better left unspoken while you keep building in silence, because real power is not in how loud you are. It's in how grounded you are. Progress isn't always visible at first. Sometimes it's internal. Sometimes it's healing, learning, unlearning, forgiving, showing up, starting over. And even when the world doesn't see it, it still matters. It still counts. Don't let the lack of applause make you think your growth isn't real. Don't fall into the trap of performing your progress just to be accepted. You don't need permission to become better. You don't need a stage to be successful. You just need consistency and the courage to keep going when no one notices. As you move forward, you'll realize that the people who truly respect growth don't need explanation. They see it, they feel it, they recognize it because they're walking their own journey too. And the ones who don't understand, that's okay. They're not meant to walk with you. Let your focus be on building, not convincing. Let your results tell the story that your words never could. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how loudly you explain, it's about how deeply you transform. The world doesn't need another promise. It needs proof, and that proof lives in your actions, your discipline, your resilience. It lives in the choices you make when no one's watching. In the early mornings, the late nights, the quiet sacrifices. Let those things define you, not the explanations you feel pressured to give. When your progress becomes your voice, it becomes impossible to ignore. Shock the world not with words, but with transformation. In a society obsessed with talking, posting, and announcing every move, it's become too easy to speak of change without ever living it. Words are everywhere. Intentions, resolutions, promises. But the ones who truly shift the energy in a room, in a life, in the world, are the ones who choose action over attention. You don't need to tell anyone what you're going to do when you're already becoming it. The most powerful statement you can ever make is becoming everything they said you couldn't be, without ever explaining how you got there. Real transformation doesn't come wrapped in noise. It's born in silence, in the long stretches of discipline where no one's cheering, in the moments of doubt where you choose to keep going anyway. It's in the early mornings you don't post about, the sacrifices no one sees, the lonely choices that pull you closer to your purpose. You begin to shift not because you need revenge or applause, but because you realize your life is your loudest message, and your transformation is the only proof you'll ever need. People often underestimate the quiet ones, the ones who pull back, go silent, disappear from crowds. But silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the greatest preparation. When you stop explaining, defending, or reacting, you create space for real growth, and that space is where the shock begins, not the kind that is dramatic or flashy, but the kind that is undeniable. People start to notice a different energy. You walk differently, speak differently, carry yourself with an awareness that only experience can give. Transformation changes more than your appearance or status. It changes your choices. It changes how you respond, how you love, how you protect your peace. It sharpens your standards. It teaches you that not everyone deserves access to your process, because not everyone has the capacity to understand it. And you realize that's okay. You're not here to convince them. You're here to evolve, to rebuild, to rise, quietly, powerfully, on your own terms. When you shock the world through transformation, it's not about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that your pain had purpose, your failures had lessons, and your setbacks were setups. That everything that tried to break you actually prepared you. And there's a different kind of strength that comes when you carry the weight of your past and still choose to show up with grace. That strength is unshakable. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply continues. People will begin to ask what changed. They'll wonder where the shift came from. But what they don't see is the inner war you fought, the fears you faced, the tears you wiped alone. They see the result, not the process. They see the glow, not the grind. That's why transformation is the most powerful shock. It carries everything you've endured in silence and turns it into evidence. Evidence that you didn't just survive, you rebuilt. Your story doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real, because the most impactful transformations come from people who were once broken, doubted, overlooked. The world may not see the beginning of your journey, but they will remember the strength it took to arrive. They will remember how you came back, not louder but wiser, not angrier but more focused. You become the version of yourself that doesn't need to shout, because everything about you says, "I've grown." Let your habits shock them. Let your peace confuse them. Let your success speak in volumes your silence never tried to, because the people who once judged your struggle will eventually have to respect your discipline, and those who ignored your presence will one day feel your absence. That's what happens when you rise without warning. You stop asking for a seat at the table. You build your own. Shock is not in the announcement. It's in the presence. It's when you walk into a space and people feel the change without needing an explanation. It's when you carry yourself like someone who's been through the fire and came back with purpose. The world doesn't expect quiet people to rise. It doesn't expect those in pain to rebuild. That's why when you do, it shocks them. The most powerful transformations are never loud. They're steady, relentless, silent revolutions happening within. And one day, they become so visible, so undeniable, that no one can pretend not to see.